had an opportunity recently to hear a couple of people say that they cannot read science fiction and fantasy books, which I found kinda weird as I love these kinds of genres. So I want to tackle this topic, this issue that apparently they felt. There is this great literal expression that basically encompasses the entire point of storytelling. It is called willing suspension of disbelief. When I have come a couple of weeks later back to the workshop, I made a presentation about this topic, the willing suspension of disbelief. And essentially I have put in front of them 3 books. First, there was this study book for high schools for history, and it encompasses basically everything from prehistoric times until old ages, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, etc. Then I've put in front of them this, The Nature of Alexander by Mary Renaud. It is a biography of Alexander the Great. The author does a great work of making conclusions from the things that we do know about Alexander and tries to understand him better as a person. And then I've put in front of them this. This is Alexander, God of War from Christian Cameron. It is a historical novel telling of the Alexander story. So I put these 3 books before them. So the school book, the biography, and the historical novel. And I asked them which of these 3 books they would like to read the most. One answered actually the school book. A couple of them answered biography and historical novel respectively. I made another presumption. I asked them to think that all of these 3 books are equally long and are in the same language. And I asked them if they were to change their choice, if that made any changes. Surprisingly or not, I don't think any of them changed their original choice. The language or the volume of the story was not an issue. Then I started to explain to them what is that these 3 books have in common, which is that they all contain at some point the story of Alexander the Great, and what separates them, or even more how they increase in subjectivity or objectivity, as you would like, and that the genre and the stages of subjectivity are the main points that separate and diverge these books. It goes from the most objective and matter of fact to the most subjective, so the more where the story matters the most, where the enjoyment of the reader matters the most. Of course, historical novels are striving to be as historically accurate as possible, but in this genre the author has the most freedom of coming up with his own story, of filling up the holes where there are some, while the other 2 are not so free in this area. So then I put in front of them another book. I said if I can go even further than this. This is The Ruin of Kings by Jane Lyons. It's a fantasy novel. And immediately the outcry, I would even say, was obvious. Like, anything but that, essentially. And it was fascinating how easily it came from this to this. Immediately as we step out of this, how should I say, the topic that is a bit more realistic, or at least more known to people, immediately when we step out into this a bit more foreign and unknown area. And so to tackle this topic, why such a big difference between this book and the other 3, we came to our title, so the willing suspension of disbelief. So the willing suspension of disbelief is a phenomenon when a reader or a viewer or whoever experiences the story lets go of any judgment of fantastical, of unreal story, and it experiences it for its drama, for its intensity, for its feelings and emotions that arises while experiencing the story. Telling more in a more common sense, it's an ability for yourself to put yourself into the story. And this phenomenon, willing suspension of disbelief, is used by all shapes and sizes and media and arts where a story is told. So be it drama, literature, songs, poetry, dances, and even any other sports. And even though the willing suspension of disbelief will be so named much later, the first versions of it we can trace back to Aristotle even. So Aristotle explains it with an example of a drama, of a theater play. And he says that the viewers, with that, when they let go, when they abandon their emotions, they become capable of experiencing the emotions of the tragic hero. And with that, they gain the understanding of life through that experience, without suffering the circumstances and effects that the tragic hero on stage suffers. In essence, we can experience emotions and the feelings of this tragic hero without us, the viewers, being this person, this hero, or without being in the position this hero is in. A lot of poets and theater writers, scene writers have utilized this phenomenon. Like even Shakespeare used it knowingly or unknowingly. The definition was eventually engraved by this poet from 18th century, the very charming gentleman called Samuel Taylor Coleridge. So willing suspension of disbelief is connected to the person's readiness to accept pre-standing notions of art as real. Coleridge uses the case of dramatic play when the author, the actors and the audience know, all of them know that whatever is happening on that stage is not real. It is just a play. However, despite of it, they basically form together an alliance, a conspiracy, even a pact, that they will enjoy themselves, that they will let themselves completely engage into the story, despite being unreal, in order for them to experience it for its joy, for its drama, as we said before. Suspension of disbelief is an important part of storytelling, and it arises whenever a story is told in general. Like I said before, in books, in films, in the theaters, in songs, even in video games, street shows, sports, even mimes use suspension of disbelief, and they use it a lot, they count on it even. Because of this ability, when we dive deeply into the unreal acts, then only then does the story become interesting and fun. Even more, it is because of this willing suspension of disbelief that we can connect ourselves with the tragic hero, with whoever the subject of the story is. So we can cry when he's sad or when something bad happens to him. Or we are kept on our toes when there is an intense scene happening in the movie. However, all of this newly built reality has to have some kind of an image, some kind of a similarity, in order for there to be some beginning deal between the author and the audience, in order for the audience to agree to even enter this story, to give it a chance. That means that the world of the story needs to have characteristics and laws that are known to all of us. In other words, even the greatest hero must have some kind of human and humane characteristics in order for us to connect to it, for us to understand it. Suspension of disbelief is in that way the ability when partially intentionally, partially unintentionally, we accept the story, the world, the people, the characters, the actions, the factors, the circumstances that are partially real, partially unreal. And for a short time, we stop being the skeptics, all in order for us to enjoy the story that is happening before us. Suspension of disbelief is in that way a key to enjoying a good story. The author must first come up with a good story, so the viewer, the watcher, can even connect with it. Reading Suspension of Disbelief is not limited with our passion, with our time, with our will, not even with our intelligence necessarily, but with our belief, with our faith. The story of Caesar's new clothes, when the emperor walks on the promenade completely naked, proud as any majestic peacock known to us, and completely confident, and people admire him completely. They buy into the story that he is wearing the most majestic clothes ever made, despite there being none. All of them, the actor and the audience, are completely engaged into this made-up story. Even after a while, the little child actually just says, "Our emperor is completely naked." Ironically, it is a small child that breaks that suspension of disbelief and states the facts as they are. In this case, we can see that it's completely easy for all of us to engage in a story, even if it's completely naked before all of us. It is a difficult and delicate balance between interesting and known to us. And in such case, the suspension of disbelief is really difficult to achieve from the author to the audience, because it is the key part, it is the first integral part of making a good story. The goal of making a good story, of writing a good book, is to make the audience suspend their disbelief. How do we achieve this feeling, suspension of disbelief? How we make our story that we want to tell, that we believe is a good one, that we would like to tell,